All righty, welcome back to the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today we are breaking down the linebacker room for Oklahoma, talking about who are the starters, what's the depth looking like, is it going to be better than last year? Is it going to be the same, or is it going to be the worst, or worse than last year? So we're going to be talking about the linebacker room, what we should be looking for, who's going to be the big performer, and I guess the implications of that and what the season could look like. So before we do, be sure to like, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And remember, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central, we go live for a live stream. So if you turn that notification bell on, it helps remind you to join the live stream when we go live. So as we talked about, linebacker breakdown for Oklahoma here. As far as the starting, trio of linebackers, it's going to be a little different than it was last year, but it's going to have some similarities. Jose, who do you think are the starters? Any shockers? What do you think?
So starters, I thought everyone would agree, but I've seen some things where they expect Connor Neer to start. I would assume that it's the returning starter, Danny Stutzman. He led the Big 12 in tackles. And then your young guy who showed a lot of potential in the one game he got to play, Jaren Kanak, on next to him at the linebacker position. I do think Connor Neer plays. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, and we might have even talked about it when he first committed to Oklahoma. He brings in a ton of experience, which Brent Venables mentioned in the Big 12 Media Day. We saw it last season. Brent loves guys with experience. I just don't believe he is a starting linebacker, and I'm sure people in the comment section will be thinking that that's wrong. But if you look at the talent in the room, the youth, like Jaren Kanak just seems like the guy that would be there on next to Danny because he's been there for a whole year. He's learned the system, and that was the reason he couldn't step on the field last year, is because he didn't know the system well enough. Well, now he's been there long enough where you would expect him to not play mistake-free football, but play well enough that he's going to be really important. He's athletic enough. And I would say if you're going to pick a guy from this last linebacker group that came in between Sammy, Lewis, and Phil, I think Lewis Carter is going to be tough to keep off the field when you're looking at the rotation in that linebacker position.
See, I think Phil Pashotti, going back to that class or whatever, but the linebacker breakdown, I think, is a fun one. I think I'm glad we started with this particular group for our breakdown segments, because I think it's one of the more interesting ones to look at. Danny Stutzman obviously coming back, and I missed 95% of the season, so I'm going off numbers and numbers alone here, but was all over the field. He had 125 total tackles, I think 10.5 for loss, 3 sacks, and a couple picks. Seemingly he was all over the field defensively, just looking at those numbers, making all sorts of plays. But the guys that played alongside him last year are both gone. David Agwegbu, who I've always been a big fan. I've had over 100 tackles last season for Oklahoma, transferred to Houston. Deshaun White had about 90, and now he's playing USFL ball or something. So you have to replace a lot of lost production there. I think Deshaun McCullough at the cheetah spot, which is kind of like a linebacker spot, is going to play very, very well. I think he has a chance to be the Big 12 newcomer of the year, defensive player of the year, all sorts of shit. At defensive, I think he's going to be very, very good for Oklahoma. I think Jaren Kanak is going to be very, very good for Oklahoma too. But both of those guys have a lot of production to fill, at least stat-wise. Again, I didn't get to see Agwegbu and Deshaun White play very much last year. I don't know how good they actually were, but their stats made them look pretty good, and you got to replace all those tackles. So they have big shoes to fill. Now, I do think if Jaren Kanak, for whatever reason, doesn't play very well, or play like we think he's capable of and like he will do, that's when I think Connor Neer probably is that number 2 in line to start there if Kanak is struggling or if Stutzman goes down. I think Stutz is pretty much penciled in as a guy who's safe. And then I think Phil Pashotti is probably somewhere 3 or 4 down there.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be a lot of debate as far as who we all think could be the starting 3, because I think Kanak, Stutzman, and McCullough are the obvious 3. As far as the depth, Shane Witter, it's now or never for him. If you can't be the number 2 linebacker and be in some sort of rotation, I just don't think it's going to happen for him. And he's someone that has had some challenges as far as staying on the field, some unfortunate luck. He's really going to be vying as we go into the summer ball and things like that. He's going to be vying for playing time, because if not, he's about to get buried on the depth chart. Connor Neer, I do think he will be in the rotation. And with Kanik, and I at the end of the day, 2-time national champion, I know it's a different level of football, but he does bring a lot of experience.
Championship pedigree.
Yeah, knows how to win a championship. And I honestly think that Justin Harrington is going to contribute in the cheetah position. I think Deshaun McCullough, I think the philosophy we're going to see as a whole between these 3 linebackers is a decent amount of rotation. The rotating through to be fresh for the fourth quarter. Because, Brandon, you didn't see a lot of the games. I know you caught the Texas Tech game. Part of the problem with the defense was they were good for about 2.5 to 3 quarters. And then by about the 5-minute mark left in the third quarter to maybe the start of the fourth quarter, they were gassed for the rest of the game. And they could not, even Stutzman. Stutzman was, obviously he had 125 tackles, but the guy was just exhausted. And then especially when you saw the Texas Tech game, by the end of the season, it was, a lot of snaps in that game, but he had a lot of miles on him for the whole season. And I think that's a learning experience with the depth and this rotation. I think you're going to see a lot of guys play, especially in the first 3 weeks. But I think even moving into the meat of the schedule, I think you're going to see a lot of contributors. You might even see a little bit of Kobe McKenzie maybe a flash here or there. And I do think you're going to be able to see maybe a Lewis Carter. And even for that, Taylor Heim has been flashing a little bit too. So, and he was the last offer and the last commit in the 23 cycle. So I don't think Taylor Heim's going to really contribute, but there is depth. There's quality depth there. And obviously there's quality depth there because Oklahoma has one 2024 linebacker commit and James Nesta, and they would like to add Braden Platt. If they don't add Platt, it seems like it's not the end of the world. So obviously there's a ton of guys that can contribute, and I think they will this fall.
Yeah. You mentioned it, the linebacker position, I guess, was the one that was really lacking last year because of the depth situation. And I think Brent Venables again addressed that in his Big 12 presser. He didn't feel confident enough. Either is because it was his first year, and Brum, you've said it before, maybe still trying to show that he belongs as head coach and not trying to call a mistake-free game, which just put him in more bad positions. He said he probably should have played more of the young guys, even though they weren't going to play the perfect football game and, be not making errors. They were at least going to get some experience under their belt. And I think that's a direct, he's directly implying that he probably should have played a guy like Jaren Kanik more than he did get to play last year. Because going into the season, we all saw Jaren as this mega athlete that even if he was going to make mistakes, he could make up for it with his athleticism. And we saw it in the Nebraska game. Deshaun White got ejected, and dude, I think he, if I remember correctly, ended up leading the team in tackles that game. He has the freak athleticism to make up for some of those mistakes. When he did play later on in the season, I think it was just too little too late. So it won't surprise me if this season I do agree, there's probably going to be a lot of rotation. Stutz and Kanik as 1 and 2 along with Deshaun. I disagree with Justin Harrington. I feel like this is just a cycle, just like what we talk about with recruiting. We suck for a little bit, then we're really good in the summer. With Harrington, we all expect the best out of him. We expect him to be an all-conference guy for whatever reason, and then come the fall, he has some flashes, and you don't really see much else from him. And
I want to ask, who would play the cheetah position? Is it Jaren Kanik?
I don't think it'd be Jaren. I think it's, you got to Deshaun and I don't know.
Jaden Rowe.
I would even say Reggie Pearson. Like you have enough safety depth that Reggie can come in and be a good, because he's a hard hitter. I mean, we all agree, and we've
We've
seen
seen
what
it.
he can do. It
Yeah.
like he might not have the pass rush moves that a Desan has, but he can come down and rush.
But I guess my argument to that is he's 5'10", a buck 98. That's not a linebacker.
That's not, but
I just, I mean, I understand the Cheetah's a hybrid, but Harrington's also 6'4", and I think Harrington's had a little bit of a disservice done to him. I might be wrong.
maybe.
We'll see.
But if you look at last year, and Brum, I don't know if you would agree or disagree. When that Cheetah position was rotated between Deshaun White and Justin Harrington, neither of them were perfect or maybe even good in some people's opinion, but the one that made the most mistakes was Harrington. And maybe he's learned from them.
Yeah.
But he hasn't ever, even before that, like he wasn't showing to be an outstanding player.
Yeah, no, I know he made a lot of mistakes. He just was also getting thrown into, the safety position, and
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of getting thrown around. We talked about how what was
Billy
it?
Bowman.
Yeah, Billy Bowman was thrown to the wolves. I just think that if now that Justin Harrington can be like, well, I don't have to worry about any other position. I just think that and to keep Kanik on the field on the other side, because I don't know if Connor Neer can play, all game. That's just my gut, and I might be totally wrong because you're right. He has not looked his best, but I think a little bit of a disservice has been done to him.
How much rotation are you guys thinking is going to happen in the linebacker room? Because you said a lot. I mean, a lot. So, I feel like it's kind of a harder position to rotate. Where it is, on the D line, you have third down, third and long, you can bring in guys specifically to edge rush. That is their one and only job. Same thing with nickel corners or even safeties. Their job is to keep the ball from crossing the first down line. I feel like a linebacker is a harder position to constantly rotate in and out, especially in the flow of a game, especially in like a Danny Stutzman type role, unfortunately for him, because that guy at the end of the day is pretty much the quarterback of that Sooner defense, and you can't just replace him or take series off. That's the part that I'm struggling with this linebacker breakdown is I don't know how much rotation, if you will, can realistically happen in the flow of a game unless you play, the starters. Let's say it's Kanik, Stutz, and DeSamacol, like we all anticipate it being. Do you play them 3 straight series and take a series off and then go back? Is that how it's going to work? Because it's hard to flip them out in the middle of a series or in the middle of a drive.
I don't think Stutzman will be subjected to a lot of the rotation just because he is the quarterback of the defense, that middle linebacker. I don't see that, but I see, maybe a series is Justin Harrington, spots here and there. It's not like every other one, but I just kind of feel like that Connor Neer might come on and they might have some different packages where they go with a 3-man front and a 4 linebacker set. And, they kind of change up the fronts as they move back and forth. Because I think they're going to be doing a lot of 4-man fronts and then, 3-man fronts and, 4 linebackers. And I think that's where you're going to get some more guys on the field and have that flexibility where they're going to be bringing in different packages. And in those different packages, I think you might be able to get a few snaps. It's not going to be a ton, but I think some more guys are going to play because I think they're all capable.
Well, and I think also in the road, like what maybe we're missing when we talk about rotation is if the games at some point start to look how they did last year, that offense isn't going to keep the ball for much longer than 2 minutes, if that. So it's more so just if the offense is moving, either scoring super fast, which is, hopefully that's the case, but if they're just not converting on third down and having to punt within a minute, which wasn't uncommon for last year's team, they would literally have the ball for 40 seconds and then have to punt because they were just moving way too fast. Then that's when the defense would get in trouble because they got to barely sit down and grab a water break, and then they're having to get back on the field. I think that's where we're going to see some of these backups play a little bit more if that does happen with this year's football team, because that's when, a guy like Danny or Jaron, the starters are going to need a break for, even if it's not for the entire series, 3 plays in, just so that they can get a couple minutes to catch their breath.
See, that would make sense. That sort of rotational thing is assuming the Oklahoma offense is putting together quick scoring drives, and that is the hope. But yeah, that makes more sense than
it was ridiculous.
I've heard that. I've heard that from people even at work now that I'm doing stuff with. Like I would say miss the season. They're like, yeah, we had the ball for. They're like Jose said, they were like, we have it for a minute and punt because the offense is moving so fast. I think maybe at some point that goes with the learning curve for Jeff Levy too. For the whole system, you have to play complementary football as they preach so much, and the offense can't have the ball for a minute or 40 seconds. I don't care who you are. That's bad news bears.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what would, if you look back to last year, that is what got them in trouble a lot of the time, because the defense wasn't amazing for the first half of the season. But after the bye week, something clicked. Even if they were tired, like they would play pretty well, like Brum said, for about 3 quarters, and then but the offense would start well in quarter 1, wouldn't do a lick in the second or third quarter, and then the defense at that point was just screwed, because even if they would, they would force punts, they would even create turnovers. The offense wasn't taking advantage of those opportunities.
It was painful, and I think you're not going to see all second stringers go out there at once, but you could see a series with Stutzman, McCullough, and then Connor Neer, or and just one guy sparingly here and there, just to spell maybe one series, or
that makes sense.
Hopefully you get a 3 and out, and it's just like 4 plays, and you're good, but.
Yeah.
So,
it's going to have to be the series changes. That's the best way to do it. But I think Stutz, unfortunately for him or good for us, everyone to look at, I think he's going to be the one constant, the one variable that's probably never out of the game unless, injury or a substantial score difference one way or the other. I don't think Stutz will be not on the field.
Well, and that's generally true for all middle linebackers when you think all the good ones in the NFL and college. When K9 was here, he was on the field constantly. And, they're the quarterback of the defense. So, and Stutzman, also another year in Schmitty's program, he might also be in better condition as well. That could be a part of it as well. They might have better conditioning since they've been in the program for well over a year at this point. So, but I feel a lot better where Oklahoma's at this year than we did a year ago at this time.
Well, they have like 40-something days till prove it time.
44.
Yeah, 44.
As of this video. And I think even with the guys that we're talking about mainly playing, like last year, the big problem was also not only was there a lack of depth, but it was just a lack of players at that position. Like there really weren't many guys because of the injuries that happened before the season even started. Now, you might not love it, but if injuries start to happen at that position group with the starters, you have Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie, and then even the younger guys and Lewis and Sammy and Phil that might not be the most ideal situation, but they're talented enough that you hope they can make some plays.
Do y'all think as starters, Jaron Kanek and Dasan McCullough will at least match what Igwegbu and White brought last year, or play better? Because I didn't get to see him.
I think Jaron will. The issue with Igwegbu, he was just too slow, especially when the opposing offense would have bigger plays. He just couldn't keep up with the speed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they'll both be fine, and I think they'll both contribute, and they'll probably be pretty close, if not better. And then also, Jose, you were talking about the depth last year. Right off the bat, they lost Shane Witter and then T.E. Roof. Those 2 off the top, and then they're trying to preserve some red shirts for the younger linebackers. It was just a mess. So definitely feel better with everything's at. But that's all I've got. I think we're all pretty in agreement. We're in agreement about the top three linebackers. It's just a matter of what packages and the play. And I think the play will be better than it was last year.
Yeah. Let's
So,
prove it time soon.
individual challenge, Brandon?
Yeah, just talk about those linebackers. What do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you think that Kanik and McCullough can replace Agwegbu and White? Just all about the linebacker room. What happens there? Are we right? Are we wrong? What do you think?
Yep, for sure. I'm curious to see if anyone gives me any heat for the Harrington take that I have. So
Someone's going to give you heat for the Harrington take you have.
I'm sure. So, all right. Be sure to like, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And be sure to catch us live Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central for our weekly live stream. Turn the notification bell on so you do not miss it. See you guys.